Good morning, moms and master books. I hope you're having a great week. Hey, this morning I am joined by my favorite person on the planet, my bride of almost 30 years, and fortunately enough for me, also the curriculum development editor here at New Leaf Publishing Group and Master Books.
Good morning.
Welcome. She almost didn't make it. She's 2 minutes late.
I am. That's my fault.
But that's okay. I'm glad she's here. So today we get to talk about something really fun. We get to talk about the logic curriculum, the new logic curriculum. Please be sure to comment on this post because I'm feeling extremely generous this holiday season, and I want to give away a complete set of the logic curriculum.
Woohoo.
So we are going to choose somebody later today. So even if it's after the video is posted, be sure to comment, ask questions, whatever, because we're going to give away the 2-book set.
Hi, Anna.
So you got to work on this logic set. I'm
Yes.
extremely excited about it.
I am too.
So you tell me why you're excited about it. I'll tell you why I'm excited about it.
Okay, I am excited about this. Number one, our son Jamin has been chomping at the bit to get a hold of this. He has been questioning me every single week. When are they going to have it done? When are they going to have it done? He's our high school student, and he saw me working on it, and he just couldn't wait to start it. So for that reason, something that my kids are excited about always makes me excited, especially for a high school student wanting to study logic. But what I'm excited about, this is, through the years we've done logic courses with our kids since our oldest were in school. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, it really resonates with the boys. They really enjoy. The girls took it and were, but the boys just loved it.
Right.
And so I have read through, I'm a stickler about reading through my curriculum before my kids get it, and all the books that my kids read and all of that, because I just think it's so important. The enemy just gets in those little details. And so I like to read everything. So I've read a lot of logic books, and I just feel this one is the best logic course I have ever read for kids. Mm-hmm. Originally, we were targeting it for 7th, 8th grade students.
Yeah, it was 7th and 8th.
But when we got it in, it was really more geared for an older set. So we put 8th to 10th on it. Logic is, and it's rigorous.
And it actually ended up being a full year's worth of content
instead of a half.
It was going to be like half a year.
Yeah.
So it actually is a full credit of elective.
Right. And that's great because my kids can get high school credit for it, which I like that. Mm-hmm. But what excites me about it is the way, I'm going to pick it up a little bit. Jason Lyle is just brilliant. He's just a brilliant, brilliant man. And he did a phenomenal job at explaining not only the nuts and bolts of logic, because honestly, there's lots of courses out there that explain the nuts and bolts of logic, and some do it quite well. Mm-hmm. But what Jason does in this is he brings it home for how it affects the Christian and the biblical worldview.
It's like so integrated.
You can't separate it in this course.
Right.
It's just amazing. And it gives the student the tools to answer some of the questions and the arguments made by the atheists and by others in the culture that don't take the Bible as truth.
So a pause. We've used logic courses.
Yes.
The Christian logic courses talk about a Christian worldview and everything else.
Right.
This is more than a typical logic course in that it is a logic course for Christian apologists.
Yes.
If your kid is going to go to university, if your kid is going to face evolution arguments, abortion arguments, right to life arguments, sanctity, any major things, like this is an applied knowledge Christian apologist, like give them the big guns type of course in a very explainable way to a high school student.
Yes. Now, I do want to caution, though, the topic is meaty. The topic of logic, you don't just sit down and just kind of, quickly read through a chapter of logic.
Right.
You want to you want to go into it with the understanding, and you may want to do it with your student. This is the type of course that you could definitely do with your student. And your whole family, as a couple, you could do this with your student.
Absolutely. Besides the curriculum, do it as a curriculum so your kid can get credit for it.
Right.
But beyond that, I would encourage everybody to do this.
Yes.
So many Christians don't have logic. I mean,
Right.
they just don't. We engage the culture with putting a post up on a book about creation evolution. And sometimes we even bait the haters because Facebook loves a drama. And I'm amazed oftentimes at how many times it's even people that should have more logic that have bought into things.
The lack of logic is present on every side.
Yeah.
I mean, I found myself challenged and reminded as I went through of, oh yeah, that I can't use that argument because it really doesn't make logical sense. It's a reminder, not just when we're trying to share our faith, but even when we're interacting with each other and within a family and with other people. The foundations of logic is taught, but like you said, it's foundational to the Christian worldview, the biblical worldview.
So this is why you've been saying I'm not making
any
logical
sense. I've been saying that without the logic course, but now I've got proof.
Okay.
It says right here. That is not a good logic case. So that's why I love it. I love that it's coming from a solid biblical look at the laws of logic. And why is there logic in the first place? It's because God made our world to operate under the rules of logic. And this course explains how that works in a biblical model.
Yes.
So that's why I'm excited. And like I said, I've read a lot of logic courses, and this blows them all away. I in fact, all my other ones that are on my shelves are going goodbye because they're a waste of space now. It's replaced with this.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. Well, so let me back up a little bit. Be sure to comment on this because I'm going to give away a free set by the end of today.
We've got lots of comments in there. Good morning,
awesome.
everyone. We're missing the comments because we're so busy talking about the logic course because we're excited.
We are going to go back through and we'll be sure to make sure if there's questions or any comments, we'll be sure to see them. So here's the difference with Master Books. Master Books is a different type of Christian publisher in that we are an apologetic company based on the creation. We the literal creation. In the beginning, God. And because in the beginning, God, there is a creator with an intended purpose. We fit into his intended purpose. There are certain rules. And the more we learn about creation and we learn about knowledge, the more we learn about him and our place in it and his order, his expectations. You sent me a quote yesterday by Gleason Archer, who was an apologist and a defender of biblical truth. He said Greek wisdom was concerned with speculation and cosmology. Is that right?
I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Which is basically the study of the universe and that's what's in it.
Right.
Different than cosmetology, which is the study of hair and beauty.
Right.
Okay, let me go backwards. Greek wisdom was concerned with speculation and cosmology.
You can't even say it now. Cosmogony. COSMO. Cosmo. GONY.
Yes. So if Anna's watching, she's gonna think that the moms have deemed me now as not there.
We'll keep going.
Okay. So Greek wisdom was concerned with speculation and the study of the universe, which was behind principles of the universe. Hebrew wisdom was interested in the revealed will of God, the law, and the observable order which God placed in the universe. And I really think that separates, for years, you and I have sold curriculum, been involved in curriculum. There's such an emphasis on Greek wisdom.
Yes.
And it's always kind of driven us nuts because the Greeks they missed God.
They worshiped knowledge, and they worshiped man's knowledge, what man could uncover.
Right.
They worship knowledge for the sake of knowledge instead of the bigger picture, which is what is God's will.
And they go backwards. So they use a deductive reasoning to go backwards, as opposed to saying, here's God.
Mm-hmm.
Let's figure out about God. So what I really like about what Master Books curriculum stands for is God. We begin knowledge with God and his creation, and then build on it. And Jason Lisle is one of the best, to me, he's one of my favorite speakers in the creation science movement. If you've ever been to the Creation Museum and you've been into is it the planetarium? Is that what that's called?
I think so.
Jason was the designer of that. He's been in numerous debates, and he's very collected and very articulate. Some of our best books, our astronomy set in the high school series, was written by Jason. He wrote Ultimate Proof, Discerning Truth. He just wrote one of the new books. I can't remember.
Pretty much, if you buy something that's written by Jason Lisle, it's solid.
It is solid.
Really
everybody
good.
In the creation ministry would acknowledge that Jason is solid. He's a Christian astrophysicist who writes and speaks on various topics relating to science and defense of Christian faith. Graduated from Ohio Wesleyan University, where he majored in physics and astronomy and minored in mathematics. He earned a master's degree and his PhD in astrophysics from the University of Colorado in Boulder. And we were blessed to have him put this together, and he actually did it pretty quickly.
You got to show them the back of the book. I'm sorry. I mean, who likes to look at the back of the book? But look at the back of this book. I mean, it's awesome. It makes me want to read the back of the book.
Yes.
I love the back of that book.
Yeah, the whole inside. The overview of the course. Welcome to the world of logic. The logic course will both challenge and inspire students to be able to defend their faith against atheists and skeptics alike. Because learning logical terms and principles is often like learning a foreign language, the course has been developed to help students of logic learn the practical understanding of logical arguments. And it does that by using real-world debates and arguments that we're involved in. To make the course content easier to grasp, the schedule provides worksheets, practice sheets to help the student better recognize logical fallacies, as well as review weeks for quizzes and the final. The practice sheets in the back of the book offer practical study for both the final exam and the actual arguments you might encounter online or in the media. So there's two books in this set. Mm-hmm. One is the student book. The student book is it's actually graphically, I just think it's
gorgeous.
It's done really well. Something that's really neat, they have the beginning of every chapter. There are words that are white or have white behind them. Those are key terms that need to be recognized. I'm telling you, if you just look, be sure, I put a link to this in the beginning. Be sure to look at the preview of this course to see how much fun it is. Because I really think high school students, I agree, our boys definitely tended to be drawn towards that.
Yeah, don't leave out the girls, because I actually love the study of logic, but I'm a little weird because Randy watches the Hallmark movies with the girls and I watch all of the...
I'm not supposed to tell that.
And I watch the documentaries with the boys. We're a little different that way.
I need to do some push-ups to regain masculinity. That's what you're supposed to do.
You just like spending time bonding with the girls. I can't stomach Hallmark movies. I'm sorry. I just can't.
There's a little logic, but it's always consistent. And then we have the list of key terms. And so we have... I'm so flustered now. I've gotten a bad brain. I
flustered him. That's not easy to do. Yeah. He loves to fluster everybody else, so that's kind of funny.
It is. So I mean, the chapters are very readable, very
the key terms you want to point out.
Yeah, they have key terms are listed, so it's in white. Then we have the key terms, but these aren't. There's a lot of fantastic illustrations in this. And see, each chapter there's a lot of meat in each chapter, but each chapter is only like 3 to 4 pages, which is plenty to get the information that you need.
It's not a big book, but wow, it packs a punch.
Now, our daughter Brittany, who works as a publicist for Newly Publishing Group, they came in and they set this on her desk, and they said, "Hey, we really want somebody to take the course before we take it to printer. We want them just to do the course that hasn't looked at it before." Now, this would be the equivalent of a 180-hour course. They said if we could have this in like the end of the week, it'd be great. So she did 180 hours of logic in a week.
Well, I think it took her longer than a week. I think she had to say, no, I don't think I can get it done quite that quickly.
But she did. She
got it
enjoyed
done in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, she loved it. I can't even look at the comments about Hallmark. So,
you are not the only guy that loves to watch Hallmark.
Well, so
I don't know that you love to.
So this is the student book, and then this is the teacher guide. Now, the teacher guide from Master Books, what we consider a teacher guide is there's anything in this book that you would not give to the student, mainly answer keys, quizzes, tests, finals, anything like that, worksheets. Well, you would give worksheets to the student if it's
the parent would.
The parent, yeah. This would be something that would go to the parent or to the teacher. Then you would tear out the sheets and you administrate what's in this to the student. So a lot of parents, like yourself, you'll tear out the answer keys, you'll tear out the quizzes and tests, and then hand the student book to the student. A lot of different ways of doing it. Some people tear off the bindings or cut the bindings and put it all in a 3-ring binder.
Right.
You can get this also in digital. So this is the teacher guide. I will let you explain the teacher guide.
Well, the teacher guide, it asks questions. So there's this, I just randomly opened a page, so you can see there's the short answer questions. So it gives a little bit of a chapter summary, and then it asks the students, it says, for the following, is the argument deductive or inductive? And then it gives a bunch of statements, and the student is supposed to identify what type of argument it is. So we'll just go to the first one. Generally, men are faster runners than women. Therefore, the fastest human is probably male. So they're not going to argue that. They're just going to say, is this argument deductive or inductive? So while there's several questions, there's 6 of them just on this first, that seems like a lot, but you're just identifying the type of argument. And of course, they've studied inductive and deductive arguments in the chapter.
So something I noticed different about this teacher guide was that at the beginning of the worksheet, it had a chapter review, which basically said to the student, here's what we're trying to teach you.
So I'll read this. It says, this chapter introduces students to the distinction between inductive and deductive arguments. Tip-off words and phrases like probably, most likely, generally are indicative of an inductive argument, but ultimately one must ascertain whether the person making the argument is trying to make a probabilistic claim or an absolute claim. And then it goes, I won't continue on, but it explains a little bit more. So then you turn the page and there's about 7-8 more problems. It says, for the following arguments, identify the premise and the conclusion, or the premises. So the first one, you should vote for Republicans because they better represent Christian values. So again, they're not going to, in this particular exercise, they're not going to argue for or against. They're just going to identify this is the premise and this is the conclusion.
Right.
And so this is an earlier on chapter. This is for chapter 5. And so the groundwork is being laid for the student to actually identify the components of the argument before they're actually asked to make arguments.
Okay.
And I really like that. And so, again, I'm going to go to, this is chapter 29. For each of the following, identify the fallacy, if there is one, and explain why it is or is not fallacious. Okay, so here we've gone from identifying something to giving explanation. And so it gently walks the student through the process of learning about the various, I'll just call them laws of logic, to explaining the whys behind it.
Okay.
And so we started off, okay, just identify these things. And now we're going into the whys as we go along. And so by the time the student, there's a whole bunch of practice sheets that lead up to the final. And if your student can get through all those practice sheets, they're going to do just fine on the final exam. So on the final exam, they have to identify the argument being stated
From each of the fallacies.
from each of the fallacies. So we have sweeping generalization, bifurcation, and there's a whole list of different, I won't read them all. There's a whole list of fallacies that are listed. And so then they're given, let me see how many, 20 different, they're given 20 different types of arguments, and they have to identify the fallacy in each one. So I'll just read the first two. No, evolutionists are not lying about all the evidence for evolution. After all, that would be immoral. So they're going to identify the fallacy from the list of fallacies. If you're going to make an argument for creation, you have to use real mainstream journals, not creationist ones. I won't go on any longer because Randy's head will explode for all of these fallacies that are actually used online.
We go back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah. So anyhow, it prepares the student by the end of the course that each one of these, well, there's all the worksheets too that they get to work with similar statements. It prepares the students to be able to identify the problem with the reasoning when they hear those statements. Because, you get out there online and somebody makes one of these statements and you are at a loss sometimes. Like, something is wrong with their statement, but you might not be able to identify the problem with it. And so this course actually gives you the understanding,
this is
what's wrong.
Okay, so as part of a little bit of a teaching tip on a final like this is a pretty comprehensive final, a little different than some of our other courses. We believe that learning takes paramount over everything. So it wouldn't be absurd for a student that doesn't do as well with testing and the pressure of that or the memorization of stuff to say, use your book. We'll do an open book on this test.
This is one of those things that you have to weigh. There's no right or wrong answer to this. This is a good teaching tips question. But here's the thing. If you let your student get out of everything that's difficult for them, that they don't want to do, they are going to go into life with unrealistic expectations that if they just don't feel like doing a certain part of their job, well, their boss is just going to say, well, that's okay, you can just do this. Okay, so that's an argument that can be made on the one hand. On the other hand, learning is much more important than how a kid does on any test. And so our goal is not to be expert test takers. Our goal is to have well-educated children. At least that's my goal. And so you have those opposing things. And so this is where I can't just say, yes, do this, or no, don't do that. This is what I would advise. Know your student, know the things that you have given them alternatives with, and then challenge them sometimes and don't let them have those alternatives. And so you have to be the one to decide as the parent teacher where those lines need to be drawn. So I can say I have my 9-year-old and my 11-year-old. Those are the two that are the most often coming to me. Do I have to do this? And that sort of thing. Now, I'll give you some real world example. Life was very, very busy this fall for me. I took 2 trips. I was sick for 3 weeks, and I had language lessons level 4 to get written and out the door. And so Gabriel came to me with his math lessons for a living education and said, "Oh, I have to do these research things." And I said, "Skip it. I don't have time for that." That was a mom thing. I just didn't have time to deal with sitting at the computer and researching Mount Everest or whatever it was. And I said, just skip it. Mm-hmm. However, he also came to me with something else, and I can't remember what it was. And he just wasn't wanting to do it. And I said, too bad, get it done.
Right.
And so, it could have been something that I said no. And he was kind of not real happy because he had gotten kind of used to a pattern of mom not having time to do stuff. So he would bring me his things that were his least favorite things to do.
Yeah.
And so when I hit him with, "No, you're going to do this," he wasn't real happy. And his presentation to me was that it was beyond his ability. But suddenly he got it done because we have certain rules that if certain things aren't done, you don't get to do other things. And so he wanted to do the other thing, and lo and behold, he completed it. So it's always that balance.
So in our house, okay, well, let me back up. We went to college together. We were high school sweethearts. I was like 14 years old. You were 13 when we started dating. Got married early.
Not at 14.
We got married like I was 20 and you were 19 or something.
Yeah.
So we went to college together. I went for marketing, which is supposed to be a little bit of a softer science, right? And she went for accounting, and she would enjoy like reading accounting books, and she loved accounting. So we took a math course together, and at the end of the course, this is what happened. The professor took me into his office and he said, "You're just not going to pass this course." But he said, "But you've got Kristen and it's going to be okay." And so he gave me a B on the course and he let me through. Now, in understanding intuition, right? God has given me a gift of being able to discern and feel certain things. So in project management and stuff like that, I am able to see big picture things that a lot of people can't, which makes me very effective with branding and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. When it comes to more analytical math, logic, those type of things, that absolutely has always been your gift. So I'm no
math genius though. Math isn't my thing,
well, she's comparatively on a curve, like, right? Okay.
I'm average in math.
All right, well then I'm way down on the bottom of the curve. But what I've been good at using my influence, my persuasion, my influence to get through certain things that required more math and logic.
Yes.
We have some kids that are brilliant like her, but learned some persuasive behavior like me, who have been able to con their way through things.
Yes.
Right? Yes. And so you have to balance it. Really, you have to, every kid is different, and you have to know when are they capable of actually applying a little bit of energy and doing it.
Right.
And then when is it time to just say, let's just learn the concepts and not focus so much on the test.
Right.
Because we don't want to break that joy of what's here is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I know we got way sidetracked in this, but I think it's kind of one of those teaching tips that you're here, and it's good to talk about because we're so different. My approach, if I was homeschooling the kids, we'd be like sitting on the couch, maybe reading a book and writing some in a journal, right? And that'd be like good for the day. The Lord has given me her, like the professor said, so it's going to be okay. And her approach is much more a structured day, students being responsible for their learning and stuff like that. So we balance each other in that way. I'm the unschooler. She's more the traditional.
I'm eclectic. I'm very eclectic. I go back to this quote because what's important is revealing the will of God to my children.
100%.
And I don't really care what the method is, as long as that's what happens. I don't really care to make my kids study anything. I mean, life would be much easier for me if they could just go off and do their own thing all day.
Yeah.
And I don't particularly enjoy teaching. So if I can get out of teaching something, I'd rather. But I recognize that it's extremely important for them to understand the will of God
Right.
in all subjects, in all topics, and they need equipped to go out to the world. If they can't read, they can't write, they can't do basic math, nobody's going to listen to the gospel message when they try to present it.
Right.
And so I have to equip my children.
I think we just have to be careful that we don't put our bias or our experience or our gifts and talents on our kids, right? Because of what I've had to struggle with like math or different concepts like that. It's easy for me to make exceptions when our kids were fully capable. Our one son is absolutely brilliant, and he is the best. He's not only brilliant here intellectually, but he's also good at smooth talking his way through things. And so he could have done more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they take advantage of their father sometimes.
Yeah.
They know how to sweet talk dad, because what's the glittery words?
Persuasion.
They work on you.
Yeah. I'm the worst. So, but they all enjoyed the argument. Now, in the homeschool movement, then we're just going to do a little bit of a comparison because you're familiar with it. There's a couple of classics, like the Fallacy Detective would be one of the courses. How would you compare this to, say, the Fallacy Detective?
Well, the biggest difference between any of them is he starts with the whole reason for logic is God and God's word, and the way he weaves it and applies it to real world issues is just phenomenal. That particular one, when I used it, it was for the younger students more as an introductory. It's, anytime you discuss logic, you're talking a very meaty topic that has to really be chewed on. That's a real lighthearted, maybe introductory type course. But even that now I'm just getting rid of, because this is just, in my opinion, for my family, this is superior. So I would rather wait now, and instead of doing it at that grade level, starting them in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I'm just going to postpone and have them take this.
So right about the time a student is also getting ready for algebra, geometry, those levels, this is like the perfect time, because their brain is like prepared for some of the more abstract concepts anyways.
Yes, and that's another thing with logic, regardless who publishes it. You always have to keep in mind, is your kid ready to study the abstract? Because this is very abstract. And if your kid is struggling with it, chances are they're not ready for the more complicated abstract ideas. And so I wouldn't try to plow through this. I would adapt the schedule, spread it out over 2 years if the kid was struggling with it, or I would just postpone doing it for a year, or even 6 months, because the brain just suddenly can click. And so that's what I personally would do if I started it and I found that my kid was just really struggling with some of the concepts. I would recognize that, like, legitimately, not just trying to get out of something. I would postpone it. And allow the brain to mature. And that just goes back to our philosophy with using grade ranges. That's why we have an 8th to 10th grade range. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem using this as a 12th grade course elective, but
or a 7th grader
a 7th that has done a lot and understands more and is ready for deeper abstract. But it's meaty. And so anyway, it goes back to our grade ranges, because kids develop these really important abilities at various times. And so, look, we've had issues with some of our kids with algebra, and you struggled with algebra. And then one day it just clicked. And that's how it was with a couple of our kids. We might have tried different algebra programs to get them through algebra, but I don't really credit any of the different courses that we used. It was more the kid was finally ready.
Yeah.
Those developmental things took place in their mind, and so they were finally ready to do algebra. Well, it's not any different when it comes to logic.
Yeah.
Because whether you're talking algebra or geometry, there is a certain amount of logic that goes through. That's what's really nice about Jacob's courses, is he teaches a lot about the logic of those courses.
That's why this would go along well. Like if somebody was doing Jacob's algebra, this would go along well at the same time, because the brain is kind of being forced to start thinking.
If
this
terms.
happens and this happens, this is what the outcome is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So the price on this from masterbooks.com is $40.69, which I think is an incredible price for an elective. I think being that it is a logic for a Christian apologist, which we want every student of Master Books to be a Christian apologist. We want them to be able to say, I believe that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. I am part of that creation. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Because sin entered the world, there's some problems, but because of his son, Jesus Christ, we have a hope. And it's not just a hope in the present, it's a hope eternal. And if they can articulate that, explain that, I think that their effectiveness in influencing the culture is impacted.
Yeah, and to back it up, we want them to internalize that for themselves and to understand it for themselves so that they can connect with their God, that it's not our faith, that it becomes their faith.
Right.
And so by understanding some of this, that picture is distracting, it's funny. By understanding this, we are giving them the foundation so that then they can share with their generation. Right. And so our goal is twofold. It's to impact the student personally, but then give them the tools that they can take out and share the gospel message with their generation.
So when a student takes principles of mathematics in 7th and 8th grade, and somebody talks about math and math being benign from God, they're able to say, no, math is the language God uses to bring order to the universe. And as we understand math, we understand the consistency of Creator God and his laws. When they talk about history, we want them to be able to say, no, that God is providential and he's bringing all things together for his plan and his purpose since the beginning of creation to the end of the earth. When we talk about writing strands, we're talking about students being able to choose the right words to communicate their ideas effectively to the generation in a way that's relevant and thought-provoking. When we talk about science, we want them to look at science and say, no, science points to the glory of God. It doesn't point to the fallible wisdom of man. And these courses, like this course to me, is just so exciting because it really does fit the mission and the heart of what we want to accomplish. And I can't wait to get feedback. And I would encourage you as parents, if you just, there are concepts in here that I've just enjoyed reading through, and I'm not trying to memorize the fallacies, and I don't want to do the course necessarily, but just reading through it and understanding how logic occurs, how to build a logical statement, certain distinctions, like he makes a distinction between stoicism and logical reasoning with emotion, and how culture defines one as void of emotion. And you just begin to realize there's some truths that you get in this as he puts it into God's word that I think even a parent would gain in preparing themselves to train their students.
Absolutely. And all of what you just said, that great big package, is why I make the sacrifice to homeschool my children. And even though I enjoy actually writing curriculum, I enjoy planning for the school year, I just don't enjoy the teaching process itself. But I make that sacrifice for all of those reasons. That's what I want my children to come away with at the end of their high school years. And it's also why I make the sacrifice of working here and being a part of what we do here at Master Books, because I just think it's so crucial.
And a lot of what we're talking about too, what you see with the Master Books curriculum is removing friction points. And friction points, that's my word, by the way, just,
I know it
yeah.
is.
We remove friends, which are little things that would come in the way. Like sometimes it's hard when you have 9 children, you're growing a business, you're serving in ministry. It's hard to sit at the table for 8 hours a day and try to train the children. Having curriculums that are independently based, where a student can sit and do a lot of the work and the lifting is on the burden of the student, that helps. Having a daily schedule prepared ahead of time so you don't have to sit there and try to figure out, how do I make this a course that fits in 36 weeks or however you school.
And not having children in tears because they had to do 20 of the exact same problem
right
on a given day, and they're in tears because they already know the information and they know they can't get through their schoolwork in a day.
Although now people are posting pictures of kids sobbing because they're finishing the books. So I'm thinking we need to put like a sucker or something in with the book to keep it no tears, so that when you finish the book, here's your sucker instead of...
They're developing an emotional attachment to their curriculum.
Yeah. We need to add a friction point at the end somehow. I don't know. But...
Yeah, but I'd much rather be consoling a child that's sad that they're done with their book and moving on to the next one than...
Yes, we just need to make sure the next one we make even better. And it's so exciting because we've been part of this since 2012. Kristen started consulting with New Leaf, and then I've been on since 2015. And every product we put out is getting better. This Logic book, to me, is one of the best products.
This is the page that I have open to right now. That's just random. It's just beautiful. It's, the things like this, the little diagrams, they just really help to visualize some of these abstract concepts.
Yeah.
And I love it. I'm so excited about this. I'm eclectic. I've always, I didn't start off eclectic. I've always had the heart of an eclectic. It just took me a while to educate myself. I am a curriculum junkie. I've always been one. I've just looked at so much curriculum through the years. And I really, like I said, I don't care what model you use. I have looked at classical. I have looked at Charlotte Mason. I have looked at, all different methods of education, and all of them have points that are practical. There's tools, there's things in the classical of taking advantage of the student's ability to memorize in the younger years. By the time you get to this point, developing arguments, taking advantage of a teenager's desire to develop arguments. This fits, that all makes sense, and I can use those as tools. Right. Same with the Charlotte Mason, same with the things that you've brought to the teaching tips. There might be things that I talk about or one of our moderators talk about. What we do is we pull from all of those things, but we have to have an understanding of what our overall goal is for educating our children at home, educating our children with a specific worldview. What are those goals? And then how do the materials back us up? How can we use those materials to move ahead with those goals? This, to me, is, this is a chainsaw. This is a power tool.
Yeah.
This is a huge deal. To educate our children for the goals that we have. Yeah. And there's nothing like it.
Yeah. It's exciting. So we talked last week in teaching tips about the mundane, the printing press, and what it was like to sit there and put all that type in place for 3 years to produce the Bibles that he did. And then all of a sudden it exploded. And right now, our crew has been we're releasing 20 to 30 projects per season. So that means in the spring, summer season, we do 20 projects. It's a huge amount of books being released. And then in the fall, we're doing the same thing. We've got copywriters, proofers, authors. There's so many people right now working to develop the curriculum. And then the feedback that we get from this group and the impact, it really is, it is neat to see, but to almost put on eternal goggles for a second and just think, what does it look like 10 years, 5 years, 15 years? What does eternity look like? To know that, we have a hand, and our mission statement is ink on paper to impact eternity. And that to me is exciting. And this course is something that we would encourage you to check it out. Be sure to continue commenting, ask any questions you have. We'll be going through today and checking everybody's comments, answering anything out. We are definitely going to give away a free set of this. And we really want to get this out to as many families as we can. So,
and it has Jamin's endorsement.
Yes.
Our high school student, he could not wait, and so we got the book in, and he's like, when are you getting the teacher guide in? And so he's been quite eager to.
And it has Brittany's endorsement, a 20-year-old too, because she said she actually really enjoyed it. So
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, hey, it's a privilege to serve your family and the work that you're doing to advance the kingdom as well through your generations. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Sorry for making you late.
Yeah, it's all right. We're good. So, all right, guys, God bless. We will talk to you later.